In this little video I talk about my steering wheel box, control box. Some of my anchor stuff arrives, and about this. Well, what have we here? I did some measuring on this and it seems it's a 1/2 inch UNC, 13 threads per inch. Not easy to find bits like that, but they are on eBay. So okay. Oh, it's quite lucky I had this bolt lying around, because this is metric, and as you can see the threads are much different. But it's been useful to be able to get a good idea of the exact size of this thing, because it does actually, we are able to put it through here and measure and make sure we get the exact size that we need. But the idea is that this is going to go like this, a little bit less, and then there's a metal bar, threaded metal bar that fits on both sides of it. So that's my plan. I've managed to find this for about £5, including postage, for the bolt and the threaded tube. In this case it's 1/2 inch UNC apparently. So that's quite good, and you'll see it locks and then spins nice and freely. The rope goes around here, and it will be necessary to build this up because the gearing will be all wrong otherwise. And that's my next job, is to work out how to build that centre up. This locking mechanism is going to be good, because although it only locks in one direction, can't do it now, oh, there we go. You can see it's quite stiff, and so it's going to be the equivalent of locked really. So I'm going to make sure that that is able to be accessed. So the idea, I think, is it goes on the side. This is a bulkhead. It goes on the side of the box, steering box. Bolts on there, and then this is going to have to be accessible through a little hole in the front, probably. Okay, we're onto it. Oh, and you might be wondering, I have this breadboard underneath here. This has just arrived. We'll take it out. And it was described as thick, but I wouldn't exactly call that thick myself. I was expecting it to be twice that thickness from the picture of it. There you go, from IKEA. Somebody's selling them on eBay. Probably for more than what they cost on IKEA. But what I'm going to use this for is I'm going to cut it down the centre here, and I'm going to put my winch, the other the big winch. I'm going to have one for the top and one for the bottom. And bolt it through there as a backing plate, just to spread the load of the bolts over a bigger area. So hopefully that does the job. Well, it's always useful to do a diagram of these things before you start. What I've done is I've drawn this to scale, so it's reasonably accurate, just so I could get an idea for where everything fits relative to each other, steering wheel and so on. And I did have this object here, and by doing the diagram I realized that it was going to put the steering wheel off to one side, and it would be better to have the steering wheel in the middle. So I decided to move this around here to this other part of the box here, which I didn't know was there actually when I was designing it. After I drew it I could see exactly where it fitted, and so here you can see the lines were going like this. Now the lines can go out there, a little bit higher up is better too, and the other one down and around out here, or through the bottom if necessary. Okay, and one of the nice things I've found is that I'm going to use this to top it all off with, so it's a nice curved piece of oak which should stop the water from damaging it. Well, I'm actually waiting again for eBay delivery because I've got my big piece of wood out that I need to cut, and I've realised that to be able to do this little job it's going to be a lot easier if I have a jigsaw. And so I've owned jigsaws all of my life, and this is the first time I've been without one. My jigsaw's in Germany, and so I've ordered another jigsaw and some blades, and this is on the way. And so there's a number of jobs which are also lining up which will be able to use this jigsaw. One of them is fitting the stainless steel aspect of this, and I think it's going to be a lot easier to cut this with a jigsaw than it is to do it any other way. But we'll see, we'll give that a shot. The pipe that came, stainless steel pipe that came, is a lot thicker than I realised, much stronger 2mm diameter tube, and so it's good to get it now before I start ordering stanchions, because it's obviously far too heavy for the kind of stanchions that I want to have on my boat. And so it's good to know, get some idea of what the right thickness of tubing is to go, and I'll probably go with less than 2mm, 1 or 1.5mm. I've still got to decide on that. Okay. Yeah, just to show you, I was going to replace this, but they're quite expensive, and the only problem with this was it was running on a threaded nut bolt like this, which very primitive and not working, not rolling very well. So what I did was I ordered a bolt the inside diameter of the tubing, and the tubing to go on here, and you can see it spins very nicely on that. And so I'm hoping this is going to breathe some new life into this little object. But I do have a problem now of cutting it, and it doesn't look that easy to cut, so I'm going to be learning for the first time how to deal with this kind of thick stainless steel. I have heard that using water instead of oil and running the drill at a low speed and cooling it down all the time with water is one way of tackling it, so I'm going to be trying that. And this also is going to benefit from the jigsaw, so I'm not going to touch this till the jigsaw arrives. So we have other things that we can do in the meantime. We have to find out exactly what they are. I don't know if you noticed in the last video, but I did order an iPad mini, second generation. Now I wasn't intending to do this originally because second generation iPad mini isn't able to run the very latest version of iOS, but it is able to run the version of iOS which Navionics requires. And so what I've decided to do, because of the price difference in getting up to the latest version, I thought, well, what I'll do is I will obtain this iPad and install. Oh, there's something coming. Oh, look at that. I've never had one that said eBay on it like that. We did mention iPad, but this isn't an iPad, I don't think. It looks too small. But we'll find out what's inside here. Just as I decide to make this video, in this moment this thing arrives. So, what do we got here? Oh, okay. Well, this is another job that we need to do and able to do. A selection of various anchoring devices. Well, not that great, is it? You know, the mistakes are the best part. Why do we need one that's at an angle? I don't know, but there you go, we've got one. This one's straight. And the rest are straight. I think I heard another bang at the door there. No, it's my imagination. Okay, I'll get the anchor. Okay, and oh, this is interesting. It's got a bit of an angle on here too. All sorts of things. It actually goes the other way, the angle goes the other way. I don't know if you can see that. You go this way? Ah, I'll go this way. Obviously, I'm making a mistake here because the first way we thought of is the right way. Okay, now that angled one is now perfectly straight for this anchor. I just want to show you that because this is from the cauldron of the Dagda and the mistakes are the best part. That is actually better than a straight one in that respect. I've got some other ones in case the chain will not go around that. I can check whether the chain fits because I have a piece of chain. I also got some of this galvanizing spray paint, which would be good for any worn out galvanizing. Okay, so let's have a look, see. I'll show you, probably won't fit. You see that? Because I chopped off the big one. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to use another link if this one fits. No. Yes. Okay, so okay, so that's basically our system, and I think I'm going to make this a permanent arrangement because the one that came off, the one that was on here, I had to saw off. It got jammed so tight, and so it's probably best to leave that on the anchor, and use that to disconnect and reconnect if necessary. A lot easier to undo than this big heavy one. Okay, that's our system. We have some other anchors that need the cold gouge treatment, so this one's alright. So you can see how we're getting ready for all this stuff in the house, and by the time we get down to the boat, it's just a simple matter of loading the stuff on board and hooking it up. And so it takes out a lot of the stress and the delays that might be associated with trying to acquire things where the boat is, because there's no marine chandlery there or anything. You have to be waiting on eBay again. Okay, now we were talking about the iPad, right, okay. And so I decided to get an iPad which is an older version, simply because £51 is not much money for an iPad, and so this is kind of where my budget is inclined to go. The second generation iPad mini is a lot better than, it's got the A3 chip, it's a lot better than the first generation. Don't buy the first generation. The second generation is low cost, can be obtained for low cost. The third and higher generations are rather expensive. So what I intend to do is I intend to, when I get the iPad, I intend to download probably the iPhone version of Navionics, the same version that I've got on my phone, and so that this should give me a bit bigger writing on the screen. It should just blow the screen up to a good size for me because my eyes aren't that good. I have to have glasses to read all the time, and so always keep 3 or 4 pairs of glasses on board in case I lose any. And so once the Navionics app arrives, I'm probably going to next month register it. First of all, download it, make sure that it works on the various systems that I have on my same iPhone account, and then I'm going to register it and download the maps that I need for, certainly for cruising around England and Ireland, and so that I know that if they change the version of iOS that this thing runs on, that I've got those maps on that particular iPad. So that's my plan, and they're always going to be upgrading this Navionics app, and it's probably in not too long a time won't run on iOS 13 or whatever it is. It'll only run on 15, and so it's a matter of just second guessing them on that. We're always going to have that issue as we move into the future. So to just try to do as best we can with this, knowing that once we've got the charts loaded up and the program loaded up, it should be able to run forever on that iPad without updating it, as long as you don't need any new charts. And it's probably likely that it will be able to download charts even though it's an older version of the system, the avionics system. I'm not going to bank on that. I'm going to want to download the charts that I feel I'm going to be needing in the next year or so, and maybe I'm going to download the Azores as well onto that, and the Northwest Passage. We'll see. Thank you. Well, at the start of this video you will have noticed that it focused on these covers. I don't know why I did this, I just did it. And the other two objects have passed through here, and first of all the lady changed sides over here. Now she's disappeared. We've got two couples. Well, it's actually the same couple, and we've also got this word, a matter of life and death. So I'm just going to say a few words about that at the end of this video, and if you're not interested in the philosophical musings of Adam of Bryn and Crewbelly, then you can turn it off now. So, because that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the video, and then I'm going to render it and upload it. So, Jupiter ascending is the time of the king and the queen, regal, the regal aspect of life. Jupiter favours true kings and true queens, and you'll see Rand Paul is making a very good stand at the moment because he's empowered completely to take on this Dr. Fauci, who's his alter nemesis really. And so this time of empowerment, of regality, is all about couples. It's not really about singles. Single people cannot be regal. To be regal you have to be married to your lady, and so it's necessary to be a couple. And it's a matter of life and death, because if you go out of here and you're not a couple, then you've got no real future. And there was a time when they used to make movies which were much more higher level in their overview. They used to think about life and death and the hereafter and the ghosts and demons and all sorts of the way that the other side might interact with this side and what might be our position if we're halfway between the two, and so on. And so this used to be the subject matter of films in the 1940s. And the reason I know this is because the only films I watch now are from the 1940s and 1950s, because these are out of copyright, which is one of the biggest evil in the world is copyright. It's the biggest lie ever perpetrated on the human species. I digress. And so there was a group of artists, when the studios took over and they took away all of the power of artists to actually make meaningful movies like this one, there was a group formed with Charlie Chaplin and the Fairbanks guy and a few other people called United Artists. And these were artists united in their art rather than the financial exploitation of the masses. And they got together so that they could make the kind of movies that they wanted to make. And you'll find a lot of the greatest movies that you ever watch come out of United Artists, or came out, all the Clint Eastwood movies for a few dollars more and stuff like that. That was all United Artists work, bringing in changes to the system. Clint Eastwood came here and used to shoot the lot of you, you're all bad guys, This has been taken out of movies. This kind of the hero who fights for justice, they've gone. Anyway, this particular movie is about a pilot who gets killed in an air crash, and instead of landing up in heaven, he ends up back on Earth, and his time is over, and they send the angels down to talk him back and lead him through the process of whether he should be allowed to stay on Earth or whether he should go to heaven or not. And so there are quite a few movies with this kind of storyline, and it's it makes you think a little bit more about this issue of life and death, which everybody's in the scientific community is pretty well much avoiding, because they don't like the ramifications of what this might mean for their scientific method. And they like to put anything that they don't understand, they say that must be madness. And so a lot of the high-level ladies in this world who would have been sitting on the tripod of Delphi end up in mental institutions put there by fake science and the fake medical profession. So really there was a time when these ideas were not only tolerated, they were part of the mainstream movie making industry, is that people had ideas about, they used to think about life and death, and whether how you behave in this world determines what might happen in the next world. And Benjamin Franklin, he was quoted as saying exactly these words. I noticed recently in a movie that I watched, and a lot of these movies are actually being uploaded as we speak onto YouTube, because there's a movement now to watching these old movies which had much better sensibilities in them. They were good, better in terms of goodness of the people portrayed in them, and how they portray goodness of the human spirit was much more fairly treated in these movies. And in the modern movies there tend to be a lot of disrespect for the human condition. And so there's a move, I'm sure there's millions of people watching only the older movies now and not bothering with all this Hollywood nonsense. And that's enough. Just not for me to go on and on, but just to bring your attention, it's now the time of the group. The group, regality is all about the group, because the head of the group, of the nation, is the king and the queen. And whether you have one or not, there's always a natural king or queen. Who is the one fighting most for righteousness in the nation? I would say it's Rand Paul in America at the moment. In Britain, I'm not sure. Probably some of the people on Resistance GB or something like that. And these movies, for a group to form, there has to be two couples, as a male couple and a female couple. And it's interesting, this is a very rare movie. Now, I have 2 copies of this. How did I get these 2 copies? Very interesting, because I had to order one. I had to find it on eBay, second hand, and order it. And I paid quite a bit of money for it, about £7 or something, to get a copy of it so I could watch it. And a month or so later, I found another one in the street in Bromyard, which is a tiny little place. And I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I have to have it. And so, because there's often with couples, you get things in pairs. And because I got a pair of them, I knew it was important. And so I say to you, if you haven't seen this movie, check it out. It's a very famous movie from its time, and it was made by a special group of people, a couple of people actually, who were paid by the Americans to make movies in England, and because they just had to satisfy a quota system, and so they were pretty much allowed to do whatever they liked. And out of that being able to do what they liked, these special movies, and there are other movies too that they made, but this is probably the best one of all that they made. So if you haven't seen it, check it out, it's interesting. Black and white.